we've had many conversations on this program saying with the productivity of Nikolai Ehlers, this team needs more Nikolai Ehlers. It was very interesting to see Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers together in a group. And I put it out in the Why Not question today to fans before we even get to the power play. Is that the Jets' number one line when they drop the puck? I mean, if Rick Bowness is trying to put together a top six that makes sense, but also has, gives yourself the best chance when you're putting your top line out to score and help the team win. Is that the line that you were envisioning? And just thoughts on the way things were split up, at least amongst those perceived top six players in training camp.
Well, let's start with your read on the groups. I think that's 100% accurate. I noted the same. I have a preview coming out at The Athletic. Maybe it's out right this moment. It's coming out today. That talks about exactly that. I think we can read into that. And I think that we can expect Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers to at least start camp together. And in terms of how I interpret that, first of all, there's a great argument to be made that those are Winnipeg's three best skaters. And what Bowness has done is just chosen his most impactful players, grouped them together. Dubois, Wheeler, and probably Cole Perfetti, I would say, would be the next line up. And if you get good seasons, if everybody plays to the absolute best of their ability in all three zones, those are your three best skaters, in my opinion. And it gives Scheifele an opportunity to build that chemistry with the Ehlers that they had just started to last season. It wasn't always there, but there's an opportunity there. Certainly it moves Kyle Connor off of that partnership with Pierre-Luc Dubois, but I think Connor has offensive chemistry with just about anybody. Pierre-Luc Dubois, if he gets Perfetti and Wheeler, will be in a good spot as well. So did I expect this exact combination? You have to think of it as possible, because if you were going to keep Connor and Dubois together, you might put Blake Wheeler on that wing. But is Cole Perfetti a first-line left wing at this stage of his career? That's a little bit much to, I think, ask, given the way that his season ended with injury. You could put Nick Ehlers there and keep Blake Wheeler on the top line with Scheifele. And that also leads to, I guess, problems, because Blake Wheeler isn't one of your three best skaters, and you've also just tried to pave the way for him to have a lesser role. So I think what this is it's Winnipeg's best three skaters put in a position to have the biggest possible impact, and the degree to which that they perform will be the degree to which Winnipeg has success with its top line. You'd hope for the best, and we will see.
Well, and when we're talking about the top six, we have to talk about Cole Perfetti, because he is the one unknown. I don't want to say necessarily unknown. I think we know that there's a lot of potential there, but certainly unproven, and a guy that's been off the ice for a considerable amount of time before the Penticton tournament. JP brought up an interesting point, saying that, putting a smaller player like Perfetti with a big, strong center like Dubois and a bigger player like Blake Wheeler may potentially give him a little bit more wiggle room to feel as comfortable as possible out there. Just thoughts on where Perfetti fits in, and if you had any comments on what you saw from him in Penticton heading into camp.
Yeah, with Cole Perfetti, I agree that, he's, first of all, just 20 years old, and he's ended the season where it looked like he was turning the corner. Those plays, those highly intelligent plays that he makes at any level of play, and you certainly saw it throughout Penticton, where he just recognizes a seam or an opportunity or a way to hold on to the puck to find a more dangerous play for his teammate, or he'll make the direct play because he has the shooting ability as well, like he did on that 2-on-1 where he scored instead of passing it across. I mean, there are lots of things to like about his game. I don't think you want to immediately throw him to the wolves on the top line. And I do think that you want to find a situation where he has opportunity for success. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois will open up space for him the exact same way that Dubois opened up space for Kyle Connor last season. There is a big, strong bulldog of a player down the middle in that situation. Blake Wheeler as well. Maybe not necessarily in terms of powering his way straight to the net like before, but he can use his body to protect the puck. And he's also, just an elite playmaker in terms of how he sees the game. This is a great situation, I think, for Cole Perfetti to be in. Players who are top six of ability, who have the size to open up a little bit of space, and who think the game extremely well. I mean, Blake Wheeler's vision is why he's still, at 36 years old, a threat to be a really dynamic power play producer. That's a good situation. And when you think of how, my last thought on this actually relates to the first line as well, how Rick Bowness is going to run his bench. Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton, and Guest, and what we can talk about that, will get the tough minutes. That's how Bowness runs it. Radek Faksa, etc. in Dallas. I've talked about this a whole bunch of times. Well, what that allows you to do is, if you're going to run them that hard in a tough minute situation, is you're allowed to use your top line guys in a little bit more of an exploitative offense first situation. So that Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers group, maybe they're being asked to take all of the offensive zone draws and all of the situations where there's a bit of a matchup to exploit. And then Dubois, Wheeler, and Perfetti are sort of second up in that sort of regard. They'll play tough competition, but certainly there's a little bit of a way that you can see them leaning on Lowry so hard. It's a good situation for that top six this year.
While we're talking about the forwards, because I do want to get to the defense, and maybe this is in the Athletic preview, which I'll be looking forward to see. But have you given any thought to what a Jet first unit power play is going to look like? I mean, I think we all agree that more Nikolai Ehlers would be positive. How does that look in your mind heading in? I mean, have you had a thought about who the 5 guys on that unit might be when Bowness has his first chance to throw them over the boards?
Well, it's easy to say. It's easy to just start listing the top offensive players and rolling with it. I expect 4 forwards and 1 defenseman. I don't think we're going to see 5 forwards, even though you could make the argument. So I'm expecting that. And the 3, I think, mainstays and obvious answers are really Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, and Kyle Connor. I don't think there's a way around that. I think that Blake Wheeler is still a strong power play performer. There's a consistency about his playmaking that really makes him a dangerous player in that situation. What I do wonder about is if Blake Wheeler should be the person through whom everything runs at this stage, because the modern power play, the most effective ones across the NHL, and I'll look to say Tampa Bay as an example, where they've run similar systems to Winnipeg, but every single player, every single forward is a shooting or a passing threat, whether it's Kucherov or Stamkos or whomever. Everybody has multiple options where they can burn you. I don't think Blake Wheeler is a shooting option that can particularly burn you. And I think Nick Ehlers does have that combination of shooting or passing threat. So what you're looking for, I would say, and if you're looking to draw it up, is opportunities where maybe Blake Wheeler's setting things up from behind the goal line, perhaps, and you have Kyle Connor on his off wing, ready to shoot the one-timer. You have Mark Scheifele perhaps in the high slot, and you have Nick Ehlers setting things up from Wheeler's position. Ehlers wouldn't be on his off wing. Maybe you want Scheifele in that situation for a one-timer option, but Ehlers would be the more dangerous shooter, and then you would choose the defenseman as you see fit. I'm not sure how they're going to run it. I'm not sure how they're going to lay it out. You'll notice I don't have Dubois on that top unit. Certainly his size and strength would be an asset, but I just don't see him on that same elite level of playmaking and shooting as those other guys. But I think that what you want is multiple threats in as many situations as possible. And Ehlers is both of those to me. So my only question is, whose job does he take? Because I think it's time he takes one of them.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And I think your point about, comparing the Jets power play last year to a team like Tampa. I mean, listen, Tampa, super elite team, 2 Stanley Cups, and we know the resumes of the guys in that unit. But I mean, the Jets have some real elite forwards as well, and we can talk about depth or whatever. We're talking about a power play unit here, and you're mentioning about Wheeler not being as much of a shooting option was so glaringly obvious at times when the Jets power play got stale and somewhat stagnant, and they didn't seem to have another club in the bag to really change it up. And I mean, that really did hurt the team for a while last season, even though the numbers would tell you that they did pretty well on the power play overall. There were some stretches where it just wasn't happening. And I guess that happens to all sorts of teams, but it really limits you with what you're able to do and how you can change it up when everything, for the most part, is designed to go through one guy.
Yeah, that's the way that I see it exactly as well. Like think about a 2-on-1, any 2-on-1 rush. The reason it's so dangerous is because the player with the puck is a threat to shoot because he has that lane, or perhaps a threat to pass as well. And you know that if it's Kyle Connor or Nikolai Ehlers or Mark Scheifele or someone of that ilk going down and leading that rush, they can do both. So the defense has to defend one more option than it can realistically stop. A power play is sort of the same thing. Just the idea is to create more options than a defense can handle. And once upon a time, when Wheeler was setting up all of Dustin Byfuglien, Patrick Laine, and Mark Scheifele, that was one more option than defenses could prepare for. Winnipeg doesn't have that many one-time bomb threats anymore. So what Wheeler essentially needs is another option other than a one-time pass to folks. So is that going to be a shot? He doesn't quite have that, and that leads to a little bit of stagnancy. I think one of the reasons why the Nikolai Ehlers, and in the past it would be Ehlers and Matthew Perreault and Brian Little, et cetera, why that unit has had so much success is because all of those players could do either thing. Perot certainly not a distance threat, but he was closer to the net. Little and Ehlers and everybody who has gone through that, they mixed it up. You didn't necessarily know as a PK, as far as I could tell, exactly what you were getting. And I think that that's more than who plays in exactly what spot. If it's drawn up so that Winnipeg has options, that's where the improvement will come from.
Murat of The Athletic is with us. An interesting fantasy primer available at The Athletic by Murat. And we're waiting any minute for the training camp preview to come out. So make sure to check that out and make sure you're subscribed to the great work by Murat and the Athletic team. Man, we've talked a lot about the blue line, and they're all still here, Murat, heading into training camp. You've got 5 defensemen with multiple years on their contract left, established NHLers. You've got Logan Stanley, that's been with the club and played significant minutes over the last 2 seasons. You got Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg seemingly ready for prime time with the big club. And you've got Johnny Kovacevic, who I think most would agree, very much capable of being a depth defenseman going back and forth between the lineup and the press box, who's no longer waivers exempt. How does this work going through training camp? And, with the fact that, we'll see a number of these defensemen split up between groups, JP talked to the level of competition under a new coach. I mean, what are you looking for, and what will be the most intriguing for you when we're speaking about the blue line when things get going tomorrow and throughout the preseason?
Well, the opportunity Winnipeg has in this situation with the new coaching staff is for performance to dictate opportunity, for performance to dictate jobs, ice time, everything. Everybody theoretically has a brand new slate to impress or not impress the new coaching staff. And that should be theoretically great news for Dylan Samberg and Ville Heinola. They've each come at this from different perspectives. Heinola, not having gone through college, he played games right away in his NHL career, probably wasn't ready for them, but has been kind of between the Moose and Jets over the last few years, has a really, you could see a high ceiling there in terms of how he moves the puck. Certainly size concerns, all of those things are real, but he's still a young player at this stage of his career, 2 years younger than Samberg is. Samberg made a smoother entry into the NHL. His 15 games last season went, fairly well. And both of those players could be sent to the Moose without any consequences for the Jets other than, how it impacts them as people in their development and all of that sort of stuff. I don't think that there's a way around Winnipeg finishing camp with 8 defensemen. I think that it has to go down that way. The simplest, most boring, most old school, most you don't want to see it way is neither one of those guys makes the NHL this year out of camp. And that's entirely possible when you have Morrissey, DeMello, Dylan, Schmidt, Pionk, Stanley ahead of them. And then you've also signed Kyle Capobianco, he was 25 years old. He has NHL experience. He needs waivers. Sorry, he needs waivers, pardon me. Jonathan Kovacevic, 25 years old, also needs waivers. That's 8 defensemen who you'd risk losing for nothing if you tried to send them to the Manitoba Moose. Certainly, Capobianco is probably, and maybe Kovacevic as well, the sorts of players that you look for a Heinola or a Samberg to outperform, to outduel, and earn their job. But there's no guarantee that Winnipeg's willing to risk losing somebody just to make room. So what I look for in this situation is who gets those minutes with veterans early. And if I recall, based on how the groups are led up, you're probably going to see Samberg or Heinola paired with Schmidt early. You're going to have to look at those groups carefully. And if those young guys get to play with veterans early on, it will be a big story and a big opportunity for them.